The auction block was colder than I expected. Not physically. The air in the capital was warm, perfumed, carefully regulated. But the stone beneath my bare feet felt like the surface of some distant moon, lifeless, indifferent. 3 years ago, I'd been an engineer aboard the colony ship Horizon's Reach. 3 years ago, I'd had a wife, a daughter, a future that stretched farther than the stars. Then the ship tore itself apart in orbit. Now I was Lot 17. Human male, the auctioneer announced, his voice amplified through crystalline pillars that hummed with soft violet light. Structurally educated. Moderate physical resilience. No infectious contaminants. Moderate physical resilience. I almost laughed. I'd survived vacuum exposure, starvation rations, and watching rescue ships ignore our distress beacon. Apparently, that translated to moderate. The nobles of this world, tall, silver-skinned, draped in layered fabrics that shimmered like liquid metal, studied me with open curiosity, some with disdain. To them, humanity was new. Unfortunate. A footnote discovered in the wrong corner of the galaxy. The bidding began without enthusiasm. 30,000 credits. 35. A pause. A yawn from someone in the upper tiers. I kept my gaze forward. I refused to let them see fear. They could sell my body. They couldn't have that. 200,000. The voice cut through the chamber like a blade. Silence followed. Absolute. Even I looked up. She stood at the back of the hall, framed by white light from the high archway. Taller than the rest. Regal without ornament. While others glittered with jewels and power, she wore simple white robes, unadorned. Her eyes met mine. Violet. Tired. And carrying something I recognized instantly. Shame. Whispers rippled through the crowd. The widowed Empress. She truly is desperate. The auctioneer swallowed. 200,000 credits. Any counter? None came. Sold. Guards moved toward me, but I didn't look at them. I looked at her. The cursed Empress. And for reasons I didn't yet understand, she had just bought me. I expected chains. I expected a collar. A mark. Some visible symbol of ownership that would make the transaction feel real. Instead, I was escorted through a corridor of white stone and vaulted ceilings into a private transport chamber. The guard stopped at the entrance. She stepped inside with me. The doors sealed. For the first time since the auction began, we were alone. Up close, the Empress looked less untouchable and more human. Not physically. Her skin held that faint silver-blue luminescence common to her species, but in the way her shoulders carried tension. In the way her fingers flexed once at her side, as if bracing for impact. "You may sit," she said. Her voice was controlled. Smooth. It did not tremble. I didn't move immediately. "Do I have a choice?" Her eyes flicked toward me. A flicker of surprise. The guards hadn't expected me to speak during the auction. Apparently, she hadn't either. "No," she answered after a moment. "But I will not insult you by pretending you do." That was unexpected. I sat across from her as the transport lifted silently from the platform. Through the transparent hull, the capital spread below us. Towers of spiraled crystal, floating transit lanes, light weaving between structures like living veins. "You are wondering why," she said. "Yes." A pause. "I require a public companion. That's what humans are worth now." I asked. "Public accessories?" Her jaw tightened, but she didn't lash out. "That is not what you are worth. That is what my position demands." "And what position is that exactly?" She studied me carefully, measuring whether I deserved the truth. "I am Elara Thane," she said at last. "Widowed Empress of House Thane, member of the High Council." I had heard whispers in the holding facility. Even refugees caught fragments of galactic gossip. "The cursed Empress. 3 consorts," I said quietly. "All dead." Her gaze shifted to the passing skyline. "Yes." I waited. My first consort was assassinated by political rivals. My second died from a hereditary illness his family concealed during the bonding negotiations. My third, her voice faltered for the first time. My third took his own life. Silence settled between us. After that, she continued, steadier now. No noble house would offer a son. The High Council granted me one cycle to secure another formal companion or forfeit my seat. And without your seat, my house loses protection, my influence. My daughter loses stability. Her voice softened on that last word. Enemies who cannot attack me directly would find other methods. "So you bought a human," I said. "Yes." Because we don't know your reputation. Yes. And because we can't refuse. Her eyes returned to mine. No denial. Yes. The honesty should have angered me. Instead, it unsettled me. You expect me to pretend, I said. I expect you to stand beside me at official functions. To appear willing. To endure. Endure what? She almost smiled. Almost. The High Council has perfected the art of humiliation. I leaned back, studying her. Why tell me all this? Because you deserve to understand your situation. A small breath. And because I do not wish to begin this arrangement with lies. The transport slowed. We were descending toward an estate at the edge of the city. Expansive terraces, gardens lit in soft blue luminescence. You will not be mistreated in my house, she added quietly. You will have quarters, education access, freedom of movement within the estate. You will not be physically harmed. And my actual freedom? A longer silence. Not yet. There it was. Honest. The transport settled. The doors opened. Before I could step out, she spoke again. If you wish to hate me, Ryan Carter, I will understand. The sound of my name from her lips caught me off guard. I don't hate you, I said truthfully. Why not? Because I had seen the look in her eyes in the auction hall. Because it wasn't cruelty. It was desperation. Because I know what it's like, I said instead, to do something you're not proud of just to protect the last thing you have left. Her composure slipped, just for a second. You have family? She asked quietly. I had. She didn't press. We stepped out onto the landing platform. The estate doors opened, and a small figure ran down the steps, silver blue skin, dark hair, perhaps 7 years old by human standards. Mother! The child stopped abruptly when she saw me. Her large violet eyes widened, not with disgust. With curiosity. Is this the human? She asked. Elara Thane. The Empress corrected gently, her tone softer than I had yet heard. This is Ryan Carter. He will be staying with us. The girl approached me boldly. You don't have the right number of fingers, she observed. I've noticed, I replied. It's inconvenient. She giggled, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt something dangerously close to warmth. Behind her smile, though, I saw something else. The same thing I'd seen in her mother's eyes. Loneliness. And suddenly this arrangement didn't feel like simple captivity. It felt like the beginning of something far more complicated. If you've watched this far, then this story is really interesting to you. Please confirm it by clicking like under this video. It doesn't cost you anything, but it will help me understand what story to publish for you next. Write in the comments who the alien woman in this story looks like, and who you would like to see in the next one. Let's move on. The first night in the estate, I didn't sleep. Not because the room was uncomfortable. It wasn't. My quarters were larger than the entire habitation module I'd shared with my family aboard the colony ship. The walls shimmered faintly with embedded light veins. The bed adjusted automatically to my body temperature. A balcony overlooked gardens that glowed in soft lunar tones. I had lived in refugee camps made of scrap metal and hope. Now I stood on polished stone floors, technically owned by an empress. It would have been easier if she'd treated me like property. Cruelty is simple. You resist it. You survive it. Kindness complicates everything. The following morning, I was given formal attire tailored to my measurements. The fabric was lighter than it looked, woven with some adaptive thread that shifted slightly with movement. Silver accents marked my status, clearly subordinate, but visibly attached to House Thane. A symbol, not of ownership, of association. I wasn't sure which was worse. Elara requested my presence in her private study before midday. I found her standing by a tall, curved window that overlooked the inner gardens. Sunlight filtered through crystalline panes, refracting into pale lavender beams across the floor. You've adjusted? She asked without turning. I've had worse accommodations. That was not what I meant. I crossed my arms loosely. Then clarify. She turned. The armor was back in place. Composed posture, unreadable expression. But I'd already seen what lay underneath. I need you to understand what is expected publicly, she said. The council session in 2 days will be your first appearance. Rules? I asked. You will walk 2 steps behind me. You will not speak unless directly addressed. You will not make direct eye contact with any High Council member unless they grant permission. You will not respond to insults. And if someone insults you? Her gaze hardened slightly. Especially then. I studied her for a moment. You're asking me to stand there while they degrade you. I am asking you to endure it with me. That landed differently. Why does it matter that I look willing? I asked. They know you bought me. They know I purchased a human, she corrected calmly. They do not know what you think. And what do you want them to think? Her hesitation was brief, but it existed. That you chose to remain. The implication hung in the air between us. If they believe I coerced you, she continued, they will use it as evidence of instability, moral weakness, desperation. I cannot afford to appear desperate. I almost laughed at that. You spent 200,000 credits on a refugee at auction. A faint flash of irritation crossed her face. I am aware of the optics. And yet you did it anyway. Yes. That single word carried more weight than the others combined. I shifted my stance. Why me? There were other humans available. Yes. Then why? For a long moment, she didn't answer. When you stood on the auction block, she said slowly, you did not lower your eyes. I blinked. Most beings do, she continued. Even Valathri nobles avert their gaze under scrutiny. You did not. So that was your selection criteria? I asked dryly. Eye contact. No. Her voice softened slightly. It was defiance without recklessness. That was not the worst description of me I'd heard. A small chime sounded from the doorway. Before Elara could respond, the door slid open and Mira entered without ceremony. Mother, Cook says Ryan eats differently than us. Is that true? Elara closed her eyes briefly. Mira, it's fine, I cut in. The child approached me with unfiltered curiosity. No disgust. No superiority. You have different bones, she said matter-of-factly. And your skin isn't reflective. Correct on both counts. Does that mean you break easier? Elara inhaled sharply. Mira, I survived a colony ship crash, I said casually. I'd say I hold up pretty well. Myra's eyes widened. You were on a ship crash? Yes. Did you fight monsters? Mostly gravity. She frowned thoughtfully. Gravity sounds boring. It isn't. She studied me for another long moment. Then, decisively, she reached for my hand. Her fingers were cooler than mine. Slender. Delicate. You're not like the other nobles, she declared. I hope not. They pretend to like Mother, she continued bluntly. But they whisper. Elara's posture stiffened. Mira, she warned gently. I hear them, the child insisted. They think I don't. They call her cursed. The word landed heavily in the room. I glanced at Elara. She didn't look at either of us. Mira turned back to me. Are you scared of her curse? No, I said without hesitation. Why not? Because curses don't blow up ships, I replied quietly. People do. Silence. Elara's eyes flicked toward me. Sharp, searching. Mira tilted her head. You're strange. I've been told. She seemed satisfied with that answer. Will you stay? She asked suddenly. The directness of it caught me off guard. Because most people leave, she continued. Or they die? Elara moved then, crossing the room in 2 controlled steps. That is enough, she said softly but firmly. Mira, you will allow Ryan time to adjust. But, Mira, the child's shoulders slumped slightly. She looked between us. Fine, she muttered. Then, to me, you can see the moon petals at night. They bloom only in darkness. She released my hand and left the room. The silence she left behind felt heavier than before. You did not have to answer her, Elara said quietly. She asked. She is a child. Children deserve honest answers. Elara's expression shifted, something like conflict behind her eyes. You are not what I expected, she said after a moment. What did you expect? A resentful man counting the days until freedom. That part might still apply. Her lips twitched faintly. Almost a smile. Almost. You are free within these walls, she said again. You may move about the estate as you wish. And outside them. Her silence answered that. I walked toward the balcony, looking out over the gardens Mira had mentioned. Your daughter doesn't see me as property, I said. She does not see the world as it is yet. Maybe that's the point. Elara joined me near the window, but kept distance between us. You do not owe us anything, she said quietly. Your presence here is transactional. Is it? I asked. She looked at me then. Really looked. Yes, she said. But it sounded less certain now. That evening, Mira found me in the gardens. The moon petals were real, luminescent white blossoms that unfolded slowly as the light dimmed. They reflected softly against the dark foliage, like small fragments of starlight rooted in soil. Mira sat beside me on a stone bench. Mother pretends she doesn't need anyone, she said conversationally. That's common among leaders. She cries when she thinks I'm asleep. I didn't know how to respond to that. She thinks I don't notice, Mira continued. But I do. I stared at the glowing flowers. I lost someone too, I said finally. Myra's voice softened. Your family? Yes. She didn't ask for details. That's why you look like mother sometimes, she said thoughtfully. What does that mean? Like you're holding something heavy inside. Children shouldn't be that perceptive. Maybe we both are, I admitted. Mira leaned back, looking up at the night sky. Maybe lonely people can help each other, she said simply. The idea settled in my chest in a way I wasn't ready to examine. This was supposed to be an act, a performance, a contract. But as I sat there beneath alien stars with a child who didn't treat me like a commodity, I felt something shift. I had agreed to pretend. I hadn't expected it to feel real. The reception was held in the upper tiers of the Capitol, an aerial estate suspended between 3 crystalline spires, linked by bridges of transparent alloy. From a distance, it looked like a crown floating in the night sky. From inside, it felt like a battlefield disguised as a ballroom. Elara stood before a mirrored panel while attendants adjusted the fall of her white ceremonial robes. Silver threads traced subtle constellations across the fabric, marking her house insignia in a language older than Earth's written history. She looked every inch an empress, composed, luminous, untouchable. But I had seen her in quieter moments now, seen the way her shoulders tightened before public appearances, the way her fingers flexed once before stepping into rooms filled with people who wished her gone. You remember the protocol, she said without looking at me. 2 steps behind. No speaking unless addressed. No eye contact unless granted. No reactions. Yes. And endure. Her reflection met mine in the mirror. Yes. The transport docked at the summit platform with barely a tremor. The doors opened to a wash of light and layered voices. Music woven with conversation, the subtle hum of political tension disguised as celebration. We stepped into the hall. The first thing I noticed was the way the sound shifted. Not silence, just recalibration. Eyes turned. Conversations adjusted. Attention sharpened. Elara Thane. Someone announced smoothly from across the chamber, voice carrying just enough to be heard by those who mattered. You honor us. A tall noble approached, silver markings etched across his face in sharp, deliberate lines. Lord Verex, if I remembered correctly from the briefings Elara had allowed me access to. Political rival. Subtle. Dangerous. Lord Verex, Elara replied evenly. Your hospitality is appreciated. His gaze drifted to me, lingering, assessing. So this is the human, he said lightly. How progressive. A ripple of soft laughter from nearby nobles. I kept my posture neutral. 2 steps behind. Eyes forward. Yes, Elara replied calmly. Ryan Carter. Verex circled slightly, as if inspecting merchandise. Does it understand our language without translation? I do. I answered before thinking. The room stilled. Elara's fingers flexed at her side. Verex's smile sharpened. It speaks. I realized too late that I had broken protocol. You were not addressed, Verex said smoothly. I apologize, I replied evenly. Do you? His tone held mock curiosity. I am told humans are impulsive creatures. And adaptable, I said. A dangerous pause. Elara shifted slightly, stepping just enough that I was partially shielded behind her silhouette. My companion is not here to entertain, she said coolly. Of course not, Verex replied, though the edge in his voice remained. We are simply curious about the resilience of your judgment. There it was. The implication. You chose poorly. You are desperate. You are unstable. Another noble joined the circle, Lady Sereth, draped in layered violet silk. I heard you spent an extraordinary sum, she said. Surely there were more suitable candidates. I required no suitability beyond loyalty, Elara replied. And you are certain you have that? Sereth asked lightly. Her gaze flicked to me. I felt the insult before it was spoken. After all, Verex added casually, humans are newly discovered, hardly civilized. The laughter this time was less restrained. My jaw tightened. Endure. That was the rule. Endure. Verex stepped closer. Too close. Tell me, human, he said, ignoring the rule he had just enforced. Do you fear the curse? The word carried deliberate weight. Elara's spine straightened almost imperceptibly. I fear incompetence more, I replied calmly. The laughter stopped. Verex blinked once. Slowly. Incompetence, he echoed. Yes, I continued evenly. It's responsible for more disasters than superstition ever was. Silence rippled outward. Elara did not move. You presume much, Varric said quietly. I survived a colony ship crash, I said. We lost structural integrity because leadership ignored engineering warnings. People died because pride outweighed data. I let the implication hang there. I do not fear curses, I finished. I fear poor decision-making. A collective intake of breath. I had stepped too far. Varric's eyes darkened. You suggest. I suggest, I interrupted carefully, that judging an empress by rumor rather than evidence reflects poorly on the council's analytical standards. That was reckless. There was no other word for it. Elara moved then, not away from me. Closer. My companion speaks from experience, she said, voice steady but edged with steel. Experience earned through survival most of this chamber cannot comprehend. The shift was subtle but undeniable. Some nobles looked unsettled, others intrigued. Varric's smile thinned. Boldness from a purchased asset is refreshing. Ryan is not an asset, Elara said quietly. The word landed differently than she intended. Purchased. Owned. Even she heard it. Her fingers tightened at her sides. Varric saw it too. Of course, he murmured. Forgive me. He stepped back at last, tension dissipating into controlled civility. The music resumed. Conversations restarted. But the air had changed. I leaned slightly closer to Elara once the circle dispersed. I overstepped, I murmured. Yes, she replied. A beat. Thank you. That surprised me more than anything. For what? For reminding them I am not alone. Her gaze flicked toward me briefly, warmth flickering beneath composure. They wanted you silent, I said. They always do. We moved deeper into the hall. More nobles approached. Fewer insults this time. More cautious curiosity. One older council member inclined his head slightly in acknowledgement. It wasn't approval, but it wasn't dismissal either. Hours later, when the reception finally thinned and the transport doors closed behind us, the silence between us felt different from before. Not strained. Charged. You disobeyed direct instruction, Elara said as the city lights slid past below. Yes. You risked escalating hostilities. Yes. And you would do it again, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes. A long pause. I have endured humiliation for 3 cycles, she said quietly. Because retaliation would confirm their narrative. Because dignity in silence was the only defense left to me. I watched her reflection in the glass. You shouldn't have to stand alone in it, I said. Her breath caught slightly. They will scrutinize you now, she warned. Test you further. I've been tested before. This is different. I know. She turned toward me fully then. For the first time tonight, she said softly. They looked uncertain. That's good, isn't it? Yes. A faint smile touched her lips. And dangerous. When we returned to the estate, Mira was waiting in the entry hall despite the late hour. You're back, she exclaimed. Did they try to be mean? Elara sighed gently. Mira, they did, I answered honestly. Mira scowled. I don't like them. That is not a politically useful stance, Elara murmured. Mira ignored her. Did you let them win? She asked me. No. Her grin widened. Elara watched us both carefully. Something had shifted tonight. Not just in the council's perception. In ours. This had begun as a performance. But as I stood there beneath vaulted ceilings, Mira clutching my hand without hesitation, and Elara watching me with something dangerously close to trust, I realized something unsettling. I hadn't spoken tonight to maintain appearances. I had spoken because I wanted to protect her, and that was not part of the contract. The assassination attempt came 6 weeks after the reception. By then, I had learned the rhythms of the estate, the shift in staff movement before council sessions, the way Elara's posture subtly altered when she expected confrontation, the silent signals exchanged between her security detail. I had also learned something more dangerous. I had stopped thinking of this place as temporary. The night it happened, the council session had run longer than expected. Debate over trade routes in the outer systems had turned hostile. Varric had pushed harder than usual, pressing Elara's authority on minor procedural issues. She hadn't yielded. She never did. When we left the council tower, the sky over the capital was dark, threaded with distant traffic lines and faint atmospheric shimmer. Mira had stayed home at Elara's insistence. Too late for her, she had said. Now I suspected it had been instinct. We boarded the transport pod without ceremony. 2 guards in front. Pilot sealed behind reinforced partition. I took my usual seat opposite Elara. "You were quiet tonight," she observed. "So were you." Her lips curved faintly. "I am often quiet." "Not like that." She studied me for a moment, then looked out the viewport. Verex grows impatient. "You think he'll make a move?" "I think," she said carefully. "He believes I am weaker than I appear." The transport banked left, entering the elevated transit corridor that connected the council sector to the outer estates. The first explosion hit before I could respond. The sound wasn't loud at first, more like a violent metallic shriek. Then the entire transport lurched sideways. Gravity shifted. The lights flickered. The pilot shouted something through the comms, cut off by a second blast. The forward hull ruptured. I was thrown against the sidewall, my shoulders slamming into hardened alloy. Pain flared white-hot down my arm. Elara hit the opposite panel. I saw her head snap back against the surface. Smoke filled the cabin instantly, thick, acrid. "Stabilizers offline," the pilot yelled. The transport tilted sharply downward. We were falling. "Brace," I shouted, though I doubted anyone could hear me over the tearing metal. Impact came seconds later. The world fractured into noise and fire. When I opened my eyes, everything was wrong. The cabin lay half-collapsed, angled against twisted support beams from the transit bridge. Sparks rained intermittently from severed conduits. The guards were motionless near the forward breach. My ears rang. My shoulder screamed. "Elara!" I coughed. She was pinned beneath a section of collapsed interior plating, lower body trapped under warped metal. Her eyes were open, focused, alive. "Ryan," she breathed. Relief hit me so hard it almost dropped me. "I'm here." I crawled toward her, ignoring the way my arm refused full movement. Blood dripped down my forehead from somewhere above my brow. Her breathing was shallow. "Your leg?" I asked. "Broken," she said through clenched teeth. Footsteps echoed outside the wreckage. Not emergency responders. Too coordinated. Too quick. "They're coming," she whispered. Through the smoke-choked breach, I saw shadows approaching. Figures in dark armor, pulse rifles held steady. Verex had decided to stop pretending. "Elara," I said, scanning for anything usable. Her fingers gripped my sleeve weakly. "If they breach," she said urgently, "you run." "No, that is not negotiable." "It is." Her eyes flashed. "Ryan, I'm not leaving you. You are not obligated." "Stop." The first armored soldier stepped into view. He paused when he saw me standing between them and her. His helmet tilted slightly. "The human," he said flatly. I grabbed the nearest object that could function as a weapon, a length of structural support rod torn loose from the ceiling. It was heavy, unbalanced. It would have to do. "Step aside," the soldier ordered. "No." The rifle raised. I moved before he could fire. I didn't think. I didn't calculate. I reacted. The confined space worked in my favor. The first strike hit the rifle barrel, deflecting the shot. Energy discharge scorched the wall instead of my chest. I closed distance immediately, close enough that ranged weapons became liabilities. The second soldier entered from the left. I swung again, low this time, connecting with knee plating. He staggered. Pain exploded across my back as a third shot grazed me. Burning. Blinding. I didn't stop. I couldn't. The fight became chaos. Metal, smoke, breath, blood. I heard Elara shouting something. Orders? My name? I don't remember all of it clearly. I remember driving the support rod into the first soldier's helmet seam. I remember grabbing a dropped rifle and firing blindly at the second as he tried to regain balance. I remember the smell of ionized air in my own blood. 3 entered. None walked out. When the smoke thinned enough to see clearly, I was still standing. Barely. The rod bent nearly double in my hand. The rifle clattered from numb fingers. My vision pulsed at the edges. "Elara," I croaked. "I'm here," she replied, voice breaking. I stumbled back toward her, knees threatening collapse. "You're hurt," she said. Later. More distant sirens now, real ones. State security. I dropped beside her, working the twisted metal free piece by piece. Every movement sent shockwaves through my shoulder and ribs. "You stupid, impossible human," she whispered hoarsely. "You're welcome." Despite everything, she almost laughed. When the final section shifted enough for her to pull free, she gasped through the pain. Can you stand? I asked. No. Then hold on. I slid one arm beneath her shoulders, the other under her knees, ignoring the white-hot agony that followed. I lifted. Somehow, every step through the wreckage felt like walking across broken glass and fire. Security forces swarmed the crash site just as I cleared the last of the debris. Empress, someone shouted. Hands reached for her. I let them take her only when I was certain she was upright in their grip. The adrenaline drained instantly. The world tilted. The last thing I heard before darkness took me was her voice. Save him, she commanded, sharp as a blade. Whatever it costs. Save him. I woke to the scent of something floral and faintly metallic. For a moment, I thought I was back in the refugee infirmary, thin cots, recycled air, the constant hum of failing filtration units. But the ceiling above me was smooth crystal, softly lit from within. No cracks, no exposed wiring, no emergency patches. Pain came next. Not sharp, distant, controlled. I shifted slightly and immediately regretted it. You are not permitted to move yet. Her voice, low, steady, controlled, but thinner than usual. I turned my head carefully. Elara sat beside the medical bed. She was upright, dressed formally, composed, but her leg was braced in a stabilizing frame, and the shadows beneath her eyes were darker than I had ever seen. You're alive, I said. Yes. Good. A pause. You were unconscious for 2 days, she continued. The physicians were uncertain. I'm difficult to kill, I muttered. Her lips pressed together. That is not amusing. No, I admitted. It isn't. Silence settled between us. Not awkward. Heavy. You disobeyed a direct order, she said quietly. Yes. You engaged armed soldiers without strategic support. Yes. You nearly died. Nearly. Her composure fractured for the first time since I'd known her. Her hand tightened against the edge of the bed. When I saw you fall, she said, voice barely above a whisper, I thought I had done it again. I frowned slightly. Done what? Destroyed someone who chose to stand beside me. The weight of that landed hard. Elara. 3 consorts, she continued, eyes fixed somewhere beyond me. All dead. Now an assassination attempt targeting me directly. You bleeding out in a transit corridor. Her voice trembled despite her efforts. They will call it proof, she said. Proof that proximity to me results in destruction. That's not how causation works, I said quietly. She gave a faint, humorless smile. Logic rarely influences fear. There was a knock at the door before I could respond. A council envoy entered. Tall, formal, neutral expression. Empress Thane, he said, inclining his head. The High Council convened in emergency session. I am aware, she replied coolly. The evidence recovered from the crash site confirms Lord Varex's involvement. Communications logs, financial transfers to the mercenary unit. I felt something dark settle in my chest. I assume he denies it, Elara said. He has been detained. Charged? Yes. A small pause. The council also reviewed the security footage. Elara's gaze sharpened slightly. They witnessed, the envoy continued carefully, a human civilian engage and neutralize 3 armed operatives in defense of a council empress. I didn't like where this was going. And, Elara prompted, public sentiment has shifted. How? Uncertainty has been replaced by admiration. That surprised even me. Some factions, he continued, have proposed that the contractual bond between yourself and the human is no longer politically necessary. Your position has stabilized. Meaning, you may dissolve the arrangement, he finished. Silence. My stomach tightened. You are offering to void my contract. I asked. The envoy glanced at me briefly. The council is willing to authorize your unrestricted release into the refugee resettlement program. Freedom. After 3 years of survival. After auction blocks and ownership and humiliation. Freedom. Elara's posture remained perfectly still. That will be all, she said quietly. The envoy bowed and left. The door sealed behind him. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. You promised, she said finally, voice measured. If the opportunity arose, I would give you your freedom. Yes. It has arisen. I stared at the ceiling. Say it clearly, I said. She inhaled slowly. Ryan Carter, she said formally, you are no longer required to remain as my contracted companion. I will authorize full release documentation immediately. Her tone was controlled, official, perfectly Empress-like. My chest felt tight. And what do you want? I asked, a flicker in her eyes. This is not about what I want. It is. No. Yes. Her composure slipped just slightly. I purchased you under desperate circumstances, she said. You have given more than was ever required. You owe me nothing further. I'm not talking about obligation. Then what are you talking about? Choice. The word hung between us. You would choose to stay? She asked quietly. Would you choose to release me? Her silence answered that. She looked away first. I will not hold you captive under the guise of sentiment, she said. You're not. She turned back sharply. I am your owner by law. You haven't treated me like one. That is irrelevant. It's not to me. Another silence. Longer this time. You fought for me, she said softly. You nearly died. I did. Why? The question was simple, but it held everything. I pushed myself up slightly despite the medical warnings. Because you're worth protecting. Her breath hitched. That is not sufficient explanation. Because you took a risk on someone everyone else dismissed. You were a political necessity. No, I said quietly. I was an embarrassment. She flinched. And you still stood beside me at that reception? I continued. You didn't silence me when I spoke out of turn. You didn't correct Verex when he called me an asset. Her eyes searched mine. You treated me like I mattered, I said, even when you didn't have to. Her composure cracked fully then. You matter, she said, barely audible. The words settled deep. You're offering me freedom, I said, but I don't want to leave. Her eyes widened slightly. You would stay, she whispered, knowing the risks. The politics? The hostility? Yes. Not as property. No. Then as what? That was the hardest question. I didn't have a neat political term for it. Not consort. Not asset. Not symbol. As someone who chooses you, I said finally. The room went still. Elara moved closer, carefully, favoring her injured leg. Her hand hovered over mine, then settled. The contact was electric. Not ownership. Not obligation. Choice. If you stay, she said quietly, it will complicate everything. I survived a ship crash. A faint, shaky laugh escaped her. This is more dangerous. I know. She studied me for a long moment. Then, slowly, she leaned her forehead against mine. A gesture I'd seen among her people before. Intimate. Equal. Then stay, she whispered. And for the first time since the auction block, I felt something that wasn't survival. It was belonging. I thought the hardest part would be surviving the crash, or fighting off armed soldiers with a bent piece of metal, or standing in front of the High Council knowing I had no status, no title, no protection beyond the woman beside me. I was wrong. The hardest part was the quiet. 2 nights after the council formally closed the case against Verex, the estate finally exhaled. Security presence reduced. Advisors dismissed. Political transmissions slowed to manageable levels. For the first time in weeks, the corridors were calm. Elara and I stood in the inner garden beneath the moon petals. They were beginning to bloom again, soft white light unfolding in the dark. You understand, she said carefully, that the council will watch us more closely now. I assumed they would. They will question your influence, my judgment, our proximity. I stepped closer, not touching her yet. Let them. Her eyes softened slightly. You are remarkably reckless for someone who nearly died. I've been told. We stood in silence for a moment. Then we heard the sound of small feet running across stone. Mother! Mira burst into the garden barefoot, hair unbound, eyes bright. Elara stiffened slightly. Mira, it is late. But the child ignored protocol the way she always did. She stopped in front of us, looked from her mother to me, and then grinned with dangerous satisfaction. I knew it, she announced. Elara blinked. Knew what? Mira folded her hands behind her back in exaggerated innocence. I heard you, she said casually. Elara's posture froze. Heard what? Mira leaned toward me conspiratorially. My mother can't fall asleep without thinking about you, the little alien girl said proudly. Silence detonated between us. Elara's entire complexion shifted, silver blue deepening toward violet. Mira, she warned softly. It's true, Mira insisted. You told your reflection in the mirror. You said you were tired of pretending you didn't care. Elara closed her eyes briefly. I looked at her, really looked. The composure, the restraint, the pride, and beneath it, fear, not of politics, of vulnerability. Is it true? I asked gently. Mira gasped in delighted scandal. Elara hesitated. For once, There was no council chamber, no rivals, no performance, just the three of us. Yes, she said quietly. The word was small, but it carried everything. Mira squealed in triumph and launched herself at both of us. I caught her automatically despite still healing ribs. You're staying, she declared. You're both staying. Elara laughed then, real laughter. Not controlled, not measured. And I realized something profound. I hadn't just chosen her. We had chosen each other. Not out of desperation, not out of political necessity, but because somewhere between auction block and burning wreckage and moonlit gardens, we had become something neither of us expected. A family. Mira wrapped her arms around my neck. Does this mean I can call you father? She asked quietly. The word hit deeper than any wound I'd taken in that transport corridor. My throat tightened. Yes, I said. Elara stepped closer, her hand slipping into mine without hesitation. Outside the estate walls, the galaxy still whispered. The council still calculated. Tradition still resisted. But in that garden, beneath alien stars and blooming moon petals, none of that mattered. For the first time since the crash, I wasn't surviving. I was home. Thank you for listening to this story to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Write in the comments what moment in this story impressed you the most. And also check out the other videos that just appeared on your screen. See you in the next video.